You can only experience life at whatever level of consciousness you're at. And whatever level of consciousness you're at is determined by your concept of self, or how you view yourself, or what you know to be true about yourself. And if you struggle with things like fear or self doubt, or even overthinking, breaking bad habits, self sabotage, anxiety, and you feel like no matter what you do to try to overcome those things, it feels like you just find yourself stuck in the same place over and over. It's because, again, your self image is kind of stuck in one place. And a metaphor for this would be like if you're in a 20-story building and you're at ground level. When you look out the window at ground level, outside of the building, you see things like trees or cars or people, but you don't really see much else. If you were to get in the elevator and you go up to level 20 or floor 20, you look out the window from that 20th floor. And from the top, you can see the entire city. You can see the skyline. You can see a river. You can see a bridge. You can see all the surrounding buildings. But from ground level, you can't see those things. However, just because you can't see those things from ground level doesn't mean that the whole city outside doesn't exist. So, when it comes to your level of consciousness or your self concept, you can think of it like that, viewing life or experiencing life from a different floor or a different level of a 20-story building. So the lower you are to the ground, that's all that you experience is what you see out of the windows. But the higher you go, you experience more or different things. So, in regards to your concept of self, let's say that I'll just use a personal example. For a really long time, I struggled with overthinking and anxiety. And a lot of the time, I didn't even really know where the anxiety was stemming from. All I knew was that I was scared of everything. And I would kind of make up these worst case scenarios in my head about anything and everything, and it would drive me crazy. And a lot of the time, what would happen is those things, the worst case scenarios, would actually play out in my life. And then I would say things like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I told you that was going to happen. Of course, I don't ever experience anything better. And I would throw almost like this little pity party for myself, right? And on top of it, I would validate the fact that I knew bad things were always going to happen to me. But see, that's the thing about how reality works. What you experience in your life is always a direct reflection of who you view yourself to be. So if I constantly viewed myself as someone that suffered from anxiety or overthinking, that's exactly why I kept experiencing those things, because you can't break a loop if you're kind of stuck in that identity of what that loop represents. So even if I would try new things, right, I would try meditating. And no matter how hard I tried to meditate or how often I stuck to meditating, no, it didn't work. Nothing ever worked. But it's because you can do all the right actionable things, but if your identity doesn't match the correct actions, it's almost like the result is still not going to show up for you, or it's going to feel like it's harder or it takes longer to show up for you. Because again, if you're stuck in that identity, I was still at like ground zero in the building, trying to overcome anxiety, overcome overthinking, trying to, you know, experience different or better things in my life while being stuck at that one point of view. So, in order to shift that, I had to shift how I saw myself. Because when you're constantly affirming things like, why am I unlucky? Or how come bad things always happen? Or one of the ones that I used to say all the time that, we just say unconsciously without even thinking about it is, when are things gonna get better? Or go figure, I knew that was gonna happen. And even though it seems like such a harmless phrase, you're essentially affirming that for yourself. When you break that cycle when you tell yourself a different story. And this is all, the reason why these loops happen, why we experience the same unwanted things over and over, which I'm just going to briefly touch base on because I talk about this in almost every other video. But the reason why that happens is because that's how your brain works. Your brain works off of a filter system. So, whatever you believe to be true based on experiences, conditioning, whatever you learn, whatever you hear, whatever you take in, and especially how you interpret those things that you take in and the story and the meaning that you give things, that all gets sent as data to your mind. And your brain is constantly taking notes. And whatever story you tell yourself that you know and believe to be a hardcore fact, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a fact, but whatever you believe is a fact for you, is what your brain stores as data. And it uses three filters: deletion, distortion, generalization, to continue showing you those things that you believe to be factual for yourself. So anything that doesn't match those beliefs that you hold, those subconscious rules, if it doesn't match, then your brain filters it out. It doesn't show you those things that are a part of life. Like I said, when you're at the 20th level or story of the building, you can see the whole city. But your brain is only going to show you what you know to be true for yourself. So if you're stuck at level 5 in the building, or floor 5, you look out, but you can't see the entire city. You can only see little bits and pieces. So that's exactly how the filter system in your brain works. This is also important because who you are, your identity, is also how you're going to behave or react to things in your life. And this is something that also feeds that loop. It keeps things replaying over and over. Because if you're identifying as someone, like I said, I'll use myself as an example. I used to identify with being anxious all the time. And I would say things like, oh, yeah, I can't do that because my anxiety. And it was like my brain's way of protecting itself. I couldn't go and do something that was new to me. I couldn't go and do something that scared me because my brain was like, no, we don't do those things. And so I would say that. I would say, yeah, I can't because of my anxiety. So I was identifying with anxiety. Therefore, my behavior aligned and matched with that. So when people would offer me opportunities or there were new experiences knocking at my door, I would self-sabotage them. I would decline them because, again, that was my identity. Therefore, that was my behavior. That's how I always led myself. If you want to experience something different in your life, you need to put yourself there first. Shift your self-concept, and your level of conscious awareness is also going to shift and reflect that. Therefore, you're going to be at a higher level or a higher floor in that 20-story building, being able to experience a lot more of life that is out there to experience. So if you need help, shifting your self-concept, breaking down these mental or emotional blocks that most of us struggle with on a daily basis, I do have my mentorship open and I am here to support you. So go take a look at that. The link is in the description. That does it for this one. I will see you again next time. I love you. Bye.